Assalamu alaikum. This is Andre with the Best Tech. In this tutorial, we're going to master how to create a full-stack multi-platform shopping app with React Native, Node.js, and MongoDB. To facilitate both beginners and advanced developers, we are going to start from scratch with a slower pace and pick up the pace as we progress. Our primary goals are to explore React Native, create a Node.js server for our application, and separate our Stripe payment server from our application server, giving us room to reuse the server in any application that we might develop in the near future. We're going to host our payment server on Railway to have one URL for our Stripe hooks. We are also going to explore other technologies like async storage, advanced MongoDB concept, and master MongoDB search indices. Without wasting much time, let's dive in and introduce the main features of our end product. So right now, let's go ahead and introduce the main features of our application. So this is what our application looks like. Right on top, we have our location and we have our cart. This location is a default location. If a user is not signed in, then this location is shown on the front page. And if you press on the cart button and you're not logged in, then you're redirected to the login page. We can press back and continue navigating through our application. Right below that, we have our title and we have our search. We have these beautiful sliders which changes to the next index each and every 3 seconds. Right at the bottom, we have our products, so we can scroll through and we can view all the products that we have. Right on top here, we have an animated title which is moving from the left to the right. So let's go ahead and introduce our search page. So if we click on search, we're redirected to the search page. And if we type a location of the product, then the results are rendered on our UI. So we can be able to search a product using the supplier, title, or any word in the description. So if we click on the product, then we are prompted to our product details page. In our product details page, we have counter whereby we can increase the number of items that we want to add to our cart. So let's go ahead and see our profile page. This is what our profile page looks like for a user who is not logged in. So we can go ahead and try to log in and then explore more of the features of our application. So if you press on login, we are redirected to the login page. For now, we don't have an account, so we have to go ahead and register an account. So I'm going to press register. So we have provided a name. So I'm just going to give a random name. We have to provide a location. So I'm just going to say Hangzhou, China. And we have to provide a password. So our password, we have the ability to hide and show our password. So if we press on hide, then our password is obscure, and if we press on show, then we can see our password. So let's go ahead and sign up. If you press sign up, then we are prompted back to the login screen. In our login screen, we have to input the email that we've just used in our registration, and we have to input our password. So here, if the application is not ready, let's say the backend is not ready, this message is shown. You can press OK, then you can retry. So now we've successfully logged in into our account. Our location has changed, and if we press on our cart, then we're redirected to our cart this time since we are logged in. So let's go ahead and view our profile page, what it looks like when a user is logged in. So if a user is logged in, this is what our profile looks like. So we have favorites, orders, cart, clear cache, delete account, and log out. So let's start by visiting our favorites. In our favorites, we don't have anything yet. So let's go to our products. If we go to a product, open a product and add it to our favorites, then go back to our favorites to view our favorites. Then the product that we just added is in our favorites page. So we can be able to delete the product. If we revisit our favorites, we don't have products anymore. So let's go ahead and add a product to our cart. So to add a product, we just have to press. So if we go back to our cart, then that product should show up here. And right here, we have the ability to also delete that product from our cart. So if we press delete, then that product is gone from our cart. And let's go ahead and see how we can make a payment. So for payments, we're using Stripe. So if you press on buy now, then we are prompted to a Stripe page whereby we are supposed to input our details and complete the purchasing process. So this is our product. We have to put an email. In our application. So our order has been processed successfully. So let's go back, visit our orders. That product should appear in our orders, and our payment status is paid since we've successfully paid, and our delivery is pending. So here we can be able to clear the cache. Let's say we have products in our favorites and we just want to clear everything. We just don't want to delete product one by one. So let's add a product. Let's add two. If we go back to our products, we have two products. Instead of deleting them one by one, we can just come here and clear cache. If we clear our cache, visit our products in our favorites, there's nothing. And we also have the ability to log out. So if we log out of an account, then we are prompted back to our home screen. Our location has changed. If we go back to the page, we are prompted back to the login page. And if you press back, this is the page that we see. So all the data that we are storing in our local storage is being stored with unique IDs. So multiple users can log in with same phone, but they can get their data as they left.
So this is here we are, and we are going to start creating a complete new project. And I already created a directory and I call it React Native, and I'm gonna be inside. Okay, now inside this, actually I'm going to go ahead and here we'll have npx create expo app React Native e-commerce. So this is our app name or project name, and we're gonna start with template blank. So with this we'll have a completely new project doing from scratch, and this is what we actually want to do. And then here we are going to wait for it, and it may take a bit of time to get started with everything. So let's wait. Now this command is the same for if you run on Windows. So regardless Windows or Mac, it should be the same. So now here it's done, and it's saying that you can run any of this command and you'd be able to make it up and running. But even before that, you have to go inside this directory. If you do ls over here, you'll see that it's here. So let's do it ls. Okay. And in fact, if you go ahead over here, you'll see that we see all these files, and there is also a directory. Now this is not where we are going to work with this, so I'm going to open everything in VS Code. So here I'm going to do open dot. So here we see that it is over here. You can click on this, you can go inside. Now our job is to open it with VS Code, but if you're on Mac, you can drag and drop on VS Code. If you are on Windows, you will see there is an option where it says open with, and if it still doesn't work, you can always drag and drop and eventually it'll work. So here we are. So I have dragged and dropped over here. All right, so this is our basic project creation. In next section we'll see we'll have a route about this files and folders, which I mean we'll have basic understanding before we go ahead and write code. So here, first we'll understand this one and what's going on here. Well, definitely this is our project name, the name that the project that we created over here. All right, and then over here we also see that the project version, it could be updated each time you make changes, and the entry point of our project is app.entry.js, and we'll learn more about that, even though we don't see the file over here yet, but it is our entry point. And then there are some scripts over here, and these scripts tell us that, okay, if you want to start your application, you can go ahead and run any of this command. But since we are using latest Expo CLI, so they might not work, so we'll run different commands. And these are the dependencies. If we run our project, we'll see that our project needs some libraries or framework, and these are the things that our project depends on. And this is deb dependencies, which means that during development process we need this thing, otherwise we don't need. So like Babel, I believe they rated Babel, it's a JavaScript compiler. So we need it during development. In production we don't need this. And here private 2 means keep this project private, don't submit it to any kind of npm registry or outside world. So this is the basic understanding of package.json. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and take a look at this one very quickly. But if you go and open this file, it's a huge file. Okay, it's extremely big, but so we don't need to go ahead and look at them one by one. But the basic understanding is that this file is generated when you try to install this one, okay, when we run npm install. But of course you can say, hey, where is our npm install? We didn't run anything called npm install yet, right? But it has been auto run first time. Okay, so what it does, this file, it locks you dependencies. Now you can understand package.json is summary of this one. So this is very exact. Okay, there's a lot of things that it does. Everything, every framework dependencies or plugins, they have exact version, and the exact version our app uses, we record them here. Okay, so they are very exact. And over here you might have a range of versions. Okay, they might not be exactly that we use in our package, in our program. So this programs, this version numbers defines the exact version. And not only that, anyone who runs your application, this React Native e-commerce app, when they go ahead and run npm install, actually because of this file, they will have exact versions of every dependencies, the one that you have used. Okay, so I build this app, and because I build it, so there would be a lot of versions over here, and you take my app and try to run it. So when you run it, this packages, they will have exact version. Okay, so this is one thing that you have to remember. A lot of other usage of this file, so we don't need them for now, because this is a very different topic. So anyway, so next we are going to go ahead and take a look at this one. So this is a configuration file for Babel, and as I talked earlier, that Babel over here, as you will see, that is a JavaScript compiler, and because of this compiler, this React Native code runs on different modern devices, including old devices. So because of this Babel, the code could be compiled correctly. That's the first thing you have to know. So over here, we are actually returning a Babel configuration. So this is Babel configuration, and this thing has to do with the compiler. And here we also see that API.cache. Now because of this one, every time we run our program over here, or project or app, so it doesn't always have to look up the configuration, because the configuration has been cached over here because of this one. Next, we are going to look at app.json. Now, this file is very important, and more important than those 3 files that we have looked before, I would say that, because this is where actually we are going to make a lot of changes. So definitely this is our project name, as you see that, And then over here we'll also have slug. So if you want to visit our app in browser, so this would be our slug, which means like our URL, and orientation is portrait, which means that it would be like, you know, like this, okay, like vertical like this, not horizontal, okay. And then here we also have app icon, where to find it. It says that go to assets folder and then icon.png, which is here, okay. And then over here it says that user interface style, which means dark mode or light mode, which means in general here we are in light mode. If you are in dark mode, then here the background would be pretty much dark and the text would be white, okay. But currently we're in light mode, so that's why we have this thing, okay. And then also here it says a splash screen. So when our app starts, where the splash screen would be found, which means the icon, and which is this one. And it says for iOS it supports tablets, okay. So these are few basic configuration. And in next section we'll take a look at this one. Well, in this section, before we understand this file, we actually want to run our app first time, and then we'll understand how everything works, and then it'll make more sense to us. So for this reason over here, I'm going to go at the top and click on terminal, and I clicked on new terminal. So right now I'm going to go to the terminal, and then over here make sure that you are in the right directory, which means that in our directory, this one, the one that we created, and inside this I'm going to run here npm run android. If you want, you can also run it on iOS. So here you do iOS, and I'm going to do Android. And regardless you run on iOS and Android, make sure that your simulator or emulator is up and running first, otherwise it's not going to work. So then you're gonna hit enter, and definitely it says that it's starting Metro Bundler. So now here it'll say that where actually you want to open. So I'm going to press A. Even if you don't do that actually, because you already said Android, so it's gonna run on Android. It doesn't really matter, okay? Because you mentioned Android, right? Anyway, so let's go ahead and take a look at this basic thing. Now, to make things excited over here, I'm going to say that, okay, open up app.js and to start with your own app. So I would say that React Native is awesome. Okay, so I'm going to save it here. So as I do Command S or Control S, and it auto refreshes, and as you see that it runs and then it reloads everything. Okay, it's awesome, and you can say, and I love it. Okay, and then you save it and you'll see the result automatically, which is interesting and awesome. Now, what is it and how does it work? So the very first thing is that we have to have this status bar. So we have to import that. Anything that you need to use from your framework or core libraries, you have to do it like this, or any kind of third-party libraries or plugin you use, you have to get them like this. So over here we got status bar, which refers to the top section, and over here we also have style sheet, text, and view. Now pretty much for style sheet itself, style sheet is for styling your app over here, and we see that we have used style sheet, the one that we imported at the top, and then we also see that we have text over here, which is this one, and then we also have view, which is this one. Okay, now everything is wrapped inside a component. This is called a functional component. You can think like this is a function or method. Okay, and in React Native they call it functional component. So eventually it returns something. So every functional component, it has to return something like this. Okay, so this is what we see, and within it, it returns JSX. So you can understand JSX, which is actually JavaScript view. Okay, so if you are coming from HTML background, you'll see that you might be familiar with view and text and things like that. Okay, so as you are familiar with this, so this is what is returned over here, and this return thing is called JSX. So in React Native functional component, they always return a JSX. Okay, and JSX is a thing that is returned and you see it on the screen, and this is what we see. And since this is a view, of course we need to style it, and this is where the style happens. And this is the very basic and simple idea that how app.js works. Okay, so in our next section we are going to deep dive into this app and style sheet and many other related stuffs.
Okay, so here we go and continue to work on this. The very first thing I'm going to do in this section, remove them all, and we'll see how it works, and along the way we'll learn more stuff, and this would help us to build our basic. So the very first thing here I want to do is like this, say export default, and here we need to say function and app. Okay, right. So this is the very first thing you want to write over here. And of course, if you hover over on this over here, you'll see that we have errors. Now, the reason that we have errors over here, it wants you to return something, okay? So here we'll have a return statement, return. You could do simple like this. And after that, here the first thing we do, we'll write something like this, text, okay, and then we'll say hello React Native. All right, so let's try to save it. So here we'll see that the property text doesn't exist. Okay, so for these things we wrote here, they didn't cause any problem, but when you write this one, we have a problem, because the first thing, the text itself is not recognized by our application, our React Native application. It's saying that where is this coming from and what does it do? Okay, so that's why we have this issue. So now for this reason you need to import it. So here we're going to write it import. Import simply means that you are going to use it over here. So get it from somewhere else, and we call it importing. So import in general tells you where to get it. Okay, so here we'll have this brackets. When you import something, you have to use brackets. All right, and now this text itself is imported from React Native. Okay, so let's go ahead and save it. All right, so here at the top we see that hello React Native, and this is awesome. Okay, now here we see that it says export default, because in React Native any kind of function or component, they call it functional component. Component mean a piece of something, right? So piece of code that you want to use in another file, then you have to use export for the function that should be used. So we want to use this one over here, and we need to tell React Native that other files can go ahead and use this. Other files means deep in the framework there are other files or piece of code that needs to use this function over here, or this component. We export it, we tell them, okay, you can go ahead and use this. Okay, and then here we see it says export default, and why we have this one. Now of course, once again, as I said, I explained that when you say export, go ahead and use it. And what is export default? Now you see this app component, app.js, here is in this file app.js. This app component is in app.js. So other file is going to use this one, and when they use this, they're going to look at this code over here and they will try to figure out which part to use. So when you write default, it's saying that go ahead and use this one. So only care about this component. So you can forget or ignore rest of the code, even if you have something different or any other component here. So the focus is this one. Okay, so that's one thing. And then also, like for example, you see text, this one, this is a class. Now we are using this one from here, and when we are going to use, we used import and then we use the curly braces. So we'll see in future when we want to use a function component that has default, we can import that, but we don't need to use the curly braces. Export default when you use in another module or another file, you don't need to use curly braces. Okay, so if we go ahead and take a look, so let's go ahead and click on this, and here you see that here it says export class, which is text. Okay, it's not export default. So that's why here we need to use curly braces. But if this one we are going to use any other place, we would not use curly braces. All right, so that's enough of theory. So let's continue to work on this. Now here, the other thing we see that this is at the top, right? And this is not looking good. So we want to change it, okay? We want to change its position, not at the top. Now, in general, in a React Native, if you have a text class, or you can also call them text widget, so we can call it, of course here it says class, but you can also call it text component or text widget. Okay, in Flutter they call it text widget. A lot of people also call it text widget in React Native. Anyway, so we need to change its position and styling. Now to change position, this text component, you need to wrap around something called view, like this, and we need to import this component or this view component, and here we need to mention by view. Okay, this also comes from React Native. If you didn't do that, you'll get error, but of course we don't see any changes over here. Now to change its position, we have to use a property which is called style. Okay, so you write here style, and then you'll have this equal sign, and then this curly braces, and then you have to use another curly braces, two curly braces, and here something is called flex, and we'll set it to 1. Okay, remember we are using colon. You gotta see that carefully, and you gotta save it, and then here we're gonna do align center. Let's save it. So it's centered, but not here vertically, it's centered horizontally. And then there is another property you need to use, that's called justifyContent. JustifyContent center. Now here you see that it is centered. So alignItems, this is more of, you can think like horizontally centering, and we also have justifyContent, which is vertically. Okay, so if you remove this, now let's go ahead and save it. So it's vertically centered, as you see that it's vertically centered, but not horizontally. Okay, so to put something in the center, in general, you'd use alignItems center and justifyContent center together. Okay, so remember, alignItems is horizontal, justifyContent is vertical. Okay, now we want to change it. Okay, we don't want it center. Now how to change? Now if you don't know what to change, what properties, then here you can click on this, and here we do see that alignItems, and it takes some other types, and if you hover over on this, it says as this flex align type could be flex start, flex end, center, stretch, and baseline. So currently actually we are using center. I mean, we defined it as center, as you can see that. Okay, so we can change it to something different, like as we have seen over here, maybe flex start or flex end. So different properties. I'm going to do here flex start. So it's gonna put at the beginning horizontally. So let's go ahead and save it. And as you see that it's there. And here you could also do flex end. So it is there. Okay. All right. So that's the first understanding. Now here there is one thing though. You could ask, what is flex, before even we go ahead. So this flex is actually tells you, flex you can think like where it means flexible, okay, and what it has to do inside this view. So you see this is view, and this is a text inside this view. The idea is this text component doesn't know how much space to take. Okay, so if we remove the view, we saw that it's always stays there. Okay, but when you put this text inside a view, this view creates space for it. Okay, the view creates space for our text component, and how much space it creates, it tells you that, okay, create flex 1. And what does that mean? That means that create space, all the available space, take all the available space on this screen, okay, and use that for view. Now if, because view, this text component is inside the view, so now this text component we can put anywhere we want inside the view. Okay, so for it makes sense. When you write view flex 1, that means take all the space for this view, and now we have text inside this view. Now since we have this text inside this view, we'd be able to position anywhere this text we want. Okay, and of course to do that, to position this guy, we are using this things over here. Remember, this things not for view itself. These properties are for the things inside this view. Okay, so hope it makes sense. And then over here, when you say flex 1, of course, as I said, that it takes all the available space over here, okay, on the screen. And then you could do 0.5. That means take half of this screen. Okay, but how do you know that it's taking half of this screen? Give this view a background color. So here I would do background color, this one. Okay, and to give it color, I would write colon and then first quote, and then I have this sign over here. I think they call it whatever the sign. Anyway, so here, for example, you could do BBB. So let's hit enter, and here you see a little gray. Isn't it awesome? Because right now here, when I say flex 5, 0.5, that means take half of the available space. Okay, and then inside this space put this one. Hopefully it makes sense, right? And then again over here we have this text align center, justify center, right? Of course, this time if you say change this guy over here, instead of center we can use other properties. And what properties to use? Here we already see, once again, flex start, flex end, space between, and space around, space evenly. So here we could do flex start, and that means whatever the space this flex has given you, you vertically put it at the beginning. Okay, so this is vertical, right? So if this is vertical, then put it at the beginning. Okay, so in React Native, this kind of position would be vertical and this would be horizontal. Okay, so when you say flex start, it's gonna put everything vertically, and then you could do flex end, so it's gonna put at the bottom, because vertically this is the end. It starts from here and it goes down. Okay, all right. Of course, if you align, if you change this one here, also say flex end, so can you guess where it's gonna put? So it's gonna put it actually here, so as you see. So we have this view, and inside the view we can use something called styles, and then we can change its position. Okay, not only that, we can change the background color. Okay, so you have to understand, once again, when you apply the color takes effects for the view, not for this guy. But then when you use align items and justify content, they actually move this component over here, not other things. Okay, so this is one thing to remember. Once again, when you apply this kind of style, it's not going to apply to this guy itself. It's going to apply to whatever the child, we may call it child. Okay, it's like a father, this is the child, so child inside stays inside this view, and these styles are applied to this one, but the background color itself is applied to the father or the parent, and this one is also applied to the parent. So hopefully this makes sense and makes our idea about React Native more clear.
So let's continue to work on this. Anyway, so we have this text over here. Now one thing we could do right over here, actually we can increase the font size. So here we can use the style property. Okay, so view and text component or widget, they all have the style property, so that you can style them. And the only condition that you have to put 2 curly braces. Okay, all right, so here we're gonna do like say font size and say 20. For now we're gonna keep the style like this, and as you see that it became big. Now for now, what if I take this out and I save it? So here we see hello React Native, and then here I can have another say for example text, and then here I can say you is cool to program in React Native. All right, so let's go ahead and save it and see how it goes. So as you see that here, whenever you have text like this, so 2 text widgets or components, they are put on the top of each other. So this is called actually column layout. Now of course, in first glance this is not visible, whatever you see there, but from the appearance, so the first one stays at the top, the second one stays at the bottom, but of course you can add more over here, and here we'll say text style, font size say 22, and then let's program in React Native. Let's go ahead and save it. So you get the idea. So this is the basic layout, how things are organized. And whenever you put things like in a view, this is the default layout style. Okay, this is the default layout style. So I'm going to put the style back. Okay, now of course it'll change a little bit over here, because here align items, which is over here horizontal, and we said end, so this is the end, right? And justify content vertically, this is also end, right? Okay, anyway, so it doesn't matter, I can take that out again and say okay, it goes back, right? The only thing that it is taking half of the whole screen, because I said that flex is 0.5. okay, all right. And there is something called flex direction. Okay, flex direction, this one. Now flex direction, here you could use something called column, and this is the default property actually. So if you come over here, and here you see row, column, and row reverse, column reverse, things like that. So there are a few properties, but this is the default one. Okay, so even if you don't write it, say for example you take it out and save it, it's the same, right? But now we are going to go ahead and change it to row, and we'll see something different happen. So let's go ahead and change it to row. So what you should imagine, instead of they're sitting on the top of each other, actually they would all get together, and of course it will look messy. So as you can see, but here I can remove that so that we get better visualization. So here, so let's go ahead and save this one, and here, hello, let's program in React Native. So when you change to row, so they are all horizontal layout. Okay, so that's how basic view works. So you have to remember, for React Native view, whatever you put inside this, whatever you do, it would always be by default on the top of each other. And if you want to change, then of course you could do row, all right, and many other properties. Okay, but basically most of the time either you want to use row or column. So do remember, by default it is column property. Okay, so this is all about how the flex direction works and why the default layout is column format, right? So that after this your idea should be very clear. Now here let's learn more about view. So here we see that okay, we have only one view, okay, and we have taken half of the screen for this view. So here I can put one, and it would take the complete screen, and here we see this, right? Okay, but if I take it out, so here it's gonna be like this. So interesting enough, here you can also use view inside view. Okay, so let's go ahead and see. Now of course we came back to the complete view, which take the whole one. Now here I can cut this, I can put another view over here. Okay, so this is one view, and for now it's empty, and then we can have another view over here, and this is empty as well. Okay, and now to understand better, so let me change it to column. Okay, now let's save it. Okay, all right, nothing is there because inside view you don't have any content, so it's an empty screen with just default style like this. Okay, these are not applied because, well, you don't have any content. So to have content you should always have text property. Okay, now I'm going to put this text over here. Okay, all right, now here I can have another text property, I mean not another, so I can copy them again and put them again. Now let's go ahead and save them. So here you see that they're on the top of each other again. So if you do have two views, and you can put anything inside if you like. For now we are putting text, and then because they're inside another view, so that view property, this one, is applied to this view. So the idea is you can have many views, but the children view, so we can think these are the children because these are inside the first view. So the children view themselves would follow the layout from the parent view. So this is a parent view. Okay, so parent view, it says column and flex end and flex end. But of course, if we remove this, so we'll see that over here it goes at the top. Okay, now what we could do, we could also play around over here. We could say center and center again. Okay, all right, so everything is centered. Of course, this is not best looking. It does look a little bit ugly. So let me go ahead and fix part of it so that it doesn't look that ugly. All right. Okay. Now it's much better. Okay. All right. So now we understand that you can have many views inside a parent view. Remember, because any app component has to return a JSX. So that means you have to return at least a view. We can also return other properties. Okay. So you need to at least return a view. I mean, that's the expected way of going ahead. All right. And whatever view you put inside parent view, those views, they are going to follow our parent view. Okay. So our parent view says column, so that's why we are column. If our parent view said row, everything would be row, as you can see like that. Okay. So this is awesome. So now it's column. Awesome. But here we are actually these two views, they're dictated by the parent view. Okay, but now the components inside this individual views, we can also control them. For example, you can have style over here, and then here we could say like this, flex direction, say, for example, here I can say for the first one is row. So what do you think how they are going to apply over here? So actually the first one, this three, they should be horizontal. So let's go ahead and check that. So as you see that, let's learn it. So what happened here, so the items inside this, the component inside this, now they are following this one. Okay, and the component inside this, they are going to follow the default one. And what is the default one for any view? You know that this is column layout, because everything has to be column, like vertical. But here, because we mentioned it is row, so it changed. But on the bigger picture, these two view, they are still column. So this view, you see this view, and this is the other view, and these two views, they're sitting on the top of each other. So over here we have so many views inside other views, but they're all following their pattern. So the idea is you can have a parent view, and parent view would control the subviews, but parent view would not control the component or elements inside the subview. Okay, so parent view just would control the layout of the subview, but the things inside the subview, they follow the layout of the subview. Okay, so hopefully it makes sense. All right, but once again, if you keep them default, by default for a view, everything is a column. So hopefully it should make sense, right? Okay, so let's continue to work on this. Now we'll have more and better understanding about how flex and the views work together, right? Now here we see that flex 1, and of course it took the whole screen, but if you take it out, okay, it takes as much space it needs just for its items or contents. Okay, so in general, when you have a view and the view doesn't have any flex, so what it's going to do is going to take only the required space. Okay, So when you say take like this, it's going to take the whole space, okay? And we also learned that you could also do 0.5, then which means half. Of course, you could do 0.3, so it's lesser, like that. So hopefully it makes sense. So in general, in your home page, you might want to do flex 1 or based on your design. Okay, so this is the first understanding. Then how these two views are going to work. Now to work better on this, so let me go ahead and put it column, okay? And then I'm going to do the same over here, style flex direction column, not a row. Let's go ahead and save it. Okay, right. Now how these two views are working. Now you see this two view itself, they are not concerned how much space to take, because here we said the first view, the parent view, will take all of them, and we also said that whatever inside the parent view, whatever inside the parent view, they would be center, and that's what exactly we see. So these two views over here are centered here, as you can see. Okay, now of course we can also control them. Okay, we can control them that how much they should take. Okay, all right. So now for this reason over here, you could do like this, say flex, okay, first one say 0.5, and let's see how it goes. All right, so this is our first one, and then here we see that it took 0.5. But now to be clear about that, here we can do actually background color. So let's go ahead and do background color, and here we could do still gray color, CCC, and let's see. Okay, now it's clear that it took half of the screen. And what does that mean? So remember earlier, this is complete one, right? And it took half. Okay, so this is exactly the half of the whole screen, but it put centered this view. Remember this view itself, because we said everything inside that should be centered. So now this height, this is the height, right? Height of 0.5. So this complete height or dimension is also being centered along with this. Now this one is this view over here. This view didn't take more space. It only took the space it needs for your items or contents. Okay, so you should know that. So every time if you don't mention flex, whatever you put inside view, that view is going to only take the necessary required space. Okay, so that's why we say it took required space, and it took the space we mentioned over here, and then they're all centered. So what's gonna happen if you do one over here? Let's see. So as you see that when you did one, it tried to take all the space over here. It tried to take all the space. Okay, but of course it didn't exactly take all the space. It took all the available space. Remember here we also have this one, so it has to be inside the parent view, right? So whenever you mention certain flex amount for dimension, it would take the mentioned one, and it would try to take as much as possible based on this. In this case, we see that it didn't take all of it because there are other children or child over here. Hopefully it makes sense. All right, so let's put it like this. Okay, now if you go ahead and take a look, these items inside this view, they are not centered, but actually we can do that. Let me go ahead and format our code. So I'm on Mac. I'm going to hit Shift Option F, so it's going to format the code. All right, now in general it should be on Windows, most probably Alter Shift F or Control Shift F, so you can try that. Most probably it's Alter Shift F, so that's going to format your code. Now it looks better. Now over here, let me continue to add more style over here. So here we could do, say, flex direction.
this one. Oh, we already have flex direction, so here we could add alignItems center. Okay, so alignItems should be centered. This one is horizontally, so we expect this one to be horizontally centered. So you see everything is centered horizontally, as you can see over there. And then we could also do the, okay, so here you may say that there is the space, so you have to remove the space. Okay, right now everything is centered perfectly. And then here we can do justifyContent center, which should be vertically centered. So let's see. So now you see that what happened here, this view take half of the whole screen, and then it took everything and put centered, and at the same time this view itself is also following this styles over here, this align styles. Okay, but not of course the background color. Okay, because the background color, you gave it a new background color, so it's following that background color. Okay, so alignItems and justifyContent is also applied to the children. Okay, the children itself, but not to the content. You have to remember that one. Okay, and this, for this guy, we didn't do anything. Okay, now we could do something different over here, say flex 0.3, and let's say, okay, right, and we may need to give it a background color, so let's go ahead and do that. So here we see background color and say DDD, and let's say it. So this is our background color. So what it did over here, like, so this child took 0.5 and this child took 0.3, so that's 0.8, and rest of them are empty because nobody is taking them. All right, so what if you remove this and you put it like this? So as you see that it took only the required space. So by default, if you don't mention any flex, the view will only take the necessary space for its child or for its item inside the view. Okay, so for it makes sense. Now, of course, to be beautiful, we could do like this. Now this is perfect, but this is not centered, right? Now since this is not centered over here, we could do like this. Say justifyContent. Here we could do center. All right, and then the rest of the thing should be just like the first one. So the first one was more of alignItem center. Let's go ahead and do that. So now with this, we look more aligned and consistent. So with this, you should be very clear that how alignItems work and how the flex works, how the justifyContent works, and of course how the view, multiple view or nested view works in terms of flex. Okay, so now we're going to continue to work on this, and we'll take one step further of our learning. Now as you see that here we have the style inside defined like this, and then also over here and over here as well. As now very soon this could be a lot and it could be messy, so we can actually separate them. Now to separate them, we need to use something called style sheet. So here we also going to import it from React Native. Here we'll say style sheet, this one. Okay, if you click on this, as you see that here we have style sheet. Okay, now we are going to import that, and we already did. And then style sheet is an object, so I'm going to call it styles. So here style sheet.create. Now style sheet is an object, and this object has a method that's called create. Okay, so we are going to pass everything, this kind of styles, to this create method or function, and then we'll save inside over here actually. So it would be object inside object like this. Okay, so once we do it, you will understand it more. So here I'm going to create something called container. Okay,
You can call it anything actually, it doesn't really matter. Now after calling it container, I'm going to copy everything from here, not copy, actually cut everything from here, and I'm going to paste it here. Okay, so we did this, and then now this container, this name, this object, actually we can use it here. And how we use that? So remember, we create styles object, and inside this we have container right now, and we just simply call it like this. And you see we don't have any changes. So what we did over here, we have this style sheet. It is an object. From this object we get this create method, and this create method, inside this we pass this thing, and after passing this we say let's create or name something for this one, so that we can reference this whole thing using one name, and we named it container. So now using this dot container we can access everything from here. So styles dot container, and this is exactly we did over here. One more thing you could ask quickly, that what is style sheet object, or what is an object? Object is like, you can say that object is part of a class. Okay, now it's a kind of different topic which we're not going to talk too much, but anyway, this class will have many objects, and objects can have objects. Okay, all right, so you can think of like a bag. A bag is a class, for example, and the bag itself will have many pockets, and every pocket will have other small pockets, and there are many bags like that, you know that. So it's like object inside object. So first, this is coming from a class. Okay, now this class create an object, and this object name itself is a style sheet, and then this style sheet has method, and we can use this method to create other objects, and that's what we did over here. Okay, so whatever the styles you have, all of them you can actually push inside them. Okay, and you can name them differently. For example, the first one, this one we called it container because this view contains everything. Of course you can name it anything you like, it doesn't have to be container. Now over here the same, I'm going to cut this from here, and I'm going to name it here, say top box. Okay, and then I'm going to put it here. Let's see if I can format the code. Yes, the formatting is done. Okay, now I called it top box. So what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to call styles and dot top box. So here where we were, here, right? Okay, so styles dot top box. Awesome. Now you see that our code starts to look like more readable and clean. Okay, so if I want to know that what style this top box has, I can just click on this and it'll take me here, and hopefully it makes sense. So I'm going to cut this one from here, and here I'm going to say that bottom box, and I'm going to put whatever I had early, and then just like the first one here, we're going to call styles dot bottom box, and here we go. Okay, with this nothing changed, but our code looks much cleaner. So if you do want, you can add more objects over here. So the idea is create is a method. You can click on this. Okay, so as you see that create here, it says that function. Okay, and it takes a lot of styles over here. Now this may look scary, it doesn't matter, we can skip that, but you get the idea. And here they also have an example that how it works. Anyway, so we're going to save it, and we see it look like this. So every time if you have code, and if you code your views or components like that, text or anything else, you can always separate them. Now even these things we can separate over here, like this items, but right now just one or two things over here, so we don't need to separate them yet.
Okay, so let's do something interesting. So far we have learned a lot of theories and a lot about view and flex. Now here, this is our first component, and this is a component that's been given by our app installation. But actually we can create our own component. So let's go ahead and create a component. And to create a component in general, you write function. Like for example, here you have this keyword function. You do the same, and then here we can say welcome. Okay. Right, for now we can skip this. We'll learn about that later. Now, because it's a component, and in React Native, component has to return JSX. Now, we talked about it a little bit early. So JSX is something that has this kind of tags. These are called tags, okay? So if you're coming from HTML, CSS background, you know that. So these are called tags. So React Native has some features from HTML. We can directly use them, and we have seen them previously over here. So as you see that. Now you have to return something that has tags, but of course you cannot return empty tag like this. But yes, of course you could return like this, but of course it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so we don't want to return empty tags like this. Okay, but for now we are going to return something that has text. So in general, say for example view. So here we are going to return a view. Okay, all right, so that's our JSX. Okay, when you return something like this that has a text, that has a tag, then you call it returning JSX. Okay, so that's what we did, and inside this here we could do text welcome. Okay, welcome to our app building course. Okay, like that. Now you can save it, but of course if you save it, nothing is going to happen, because once you create a component, to use it you need to call it from your main component, which is app. In general, app component is the main component of your application in React Native. This is more like an entry point. You can understand this is more like the main function. If you're coming from like C++, C or PHP or any kind of related programming, you'll see that everything has a main function. So here we are doing the same thing, right? Now inside this we have seen that we have few views, right? 2 views. Now since this returns a JSX and these are also JSX, so we can directly call this one from here. Okay, but of course you need to call it from inside the parent container. Okay, so here we're gonna call welcome view, but of course you cannot just call it like this or in that manner if you're coming from other background. Remember, it's a front-end application or framework, so you cannot just call it like that. So you have to use the tags. Okay, so here now it's gonna work. Now we'll just use a closing tag over here. Okay, unlike this, they have a view that starts with and the view ends with a closing tag, but here we just have welcome, and inside of welcome we don't need to put anything. For example, inside this view we have children. Okay, so that's why we use say 2 views, view 1, view 2, but here we don't have any children, so we can just finish it with a closing tag. We don't need to write welcome again. Right, now we're gonna save it. Okay, and if you see that it already appeared at the top, welcome our app building course. Okay, All right, now just to make it more visually appealing, over here I'm going to change this, guys. Okay, so for example 0.3, 0.3. okay, now it will shrink and we'll see that here it shows up. Okay, all right, so this is so far so good. So the idea is you can always create a component, and the component has to be defined as a function, and in general, to use the component you need to call it from your app component and make sure that it's inside your view, okay, the main view, because if you do put it outside, if you take it and put it outside over here, it's not gonna work, and it's already throwing error, as you can see. Okay, so that's how you go ahead and create a component. And of course, one more thing, the component has to return JSX. Okay, so from here on we are going to continue, and we are going to take things one step further. Here we have defined our component, but in fact if you have a lot of components you can always separate them, and which is also a good idea, because you already see that our application, the code is getting larger, so it's better you separate them. Now to be organized, I'm going to create a new folder over here, and I'm going to call it source. Okay, and because this is a component, so here I'm going to go ahead and create another folder, and I'm going to call it components. Okay, and now inside this I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it welcome view.js. Now you need to see the naming convention. In general, you can name it in Pascal case. Pascal case means if the first letter is always capital, and then if you have a second word, the second word first letter is also capital. So here we are saying that welcome view, so we have two words. So the first word is capital, first letter of the first word is capital, the first letter of the second word is also capital, and this is called Pascal case naming convention. And the suffix of the name, you could do JSX or you could do JS. So keeping JS is the more preferred and recommended, so we are going to go ahead and name it as JS. So welcome view JS. So remember the component naming convention. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut and copy this one and save it. So of course we have an issue over here. Looks like it's not showing up, or not showing up, it's the error. We also need to remove this. Okay, now it's fine, and whatever we have copied we can just paste it here, save it, but of course nothing happens. Okay, now first thing first, here we need to import this components, the view and text components. Okay, so they are from React Native, so let's go ahead and do that. View and text from React Native. Okay, all right, now let's go ahead and save it. Nothing happens. And because this is a component and this is defined in a separate file, previously it was here, but now it's defined in a separate file. And as it is defined in a separate file, we need to write here something like this: export default welcome view. So our view name is welcome view, and then we want other files, for example app.js file, to use this component.
So we are saying go ahead and export it. Export means giving out, right? So you're giving to the outside world. So that's why you need to do it. So being export is more like making it public. If you don't write it like this export default, most probably you're going to end up with errors. Okay, so I'm going to save it, but that's not the first one. And the other one that, okay, so over here I want to use this component between these two tags. So here we're going to say welcome view, and as you see that the path is automatically given over here. So I'm going to hit enter and do like this, and you will see that at the top it's been automatically imported. If you don't do this, this path will not be automatically imported. Okay, so why we did this thing? Just like, for example, here we have used view and text components, and we have to tell our compiler where to find them. So we said view and text find from React Native from this library. Okay, at the same time here we are going to use this component, and then we need to tell our compiler or our program that where to find this welcome view. Okay, all right. And the other thing is that here, because this is a component, you have to use tags. Okay, starting tag, this one, and closing tag. Okay, if you just write here say welcome view, it's not going to work. Of course, it's a string. Okay, it's not going to work here, and it'll throw an error. So you have to have this starting tag, this one, and then the closing tag. Okay, so as it is there, you see. So hopefully it makes sense. And second, the other thing is that you'll see, okay, this view or this text components, they all have an ending using the same component name, but here we don't have. The reason is because this component doesn't take any children. For example, this view has a children, so that's why we put the children within this closing tag. Okay, all right. But at the same time, text is the same. This text and this text, in between we have children. Our children is hello or things like that. Okay, or the text like that. So that's why over here you don't need to do like this. Okay, you don't need to do this. Even if you do that, it's going to work. Okay, but then if you say, for example, here put text hello, okay, you're not going to say there's a hello over here. The reason is this component doesn't take any children over here. As you see that it doesn't take any children. Okay, of course you can pass the children over here. We'll see and talk about that later, step by step. But for now, our component doesn't accept anything. Okay, because here you put text in between welcome, but our component is not designed to take anything from the outside world. It only takes whatever inside this component. Okay, hopefully after this your idea about components and how to use them should be more clear. Okay, so now we're gonna continue to work on this and boost our understanding about everything. So right now we're gonna take one step further and try to style our app. Now right now we do see that our app boxes, they have edges, sharp edges, but we want to apply style to them. One of the style that we want to apply to the first box, the top box over here, I want to apply something called border radius. Okay, border radius, and then I'm gonna apply 10. So as you see that it's not sharp anymore, and which is beautiful. And not only that, we also see that over here, this one, it's this text and this box, they're too close to each other. So I want to create some distance between this view and this text itself. Now I want to apply some space out of this view, outside. Now if you want to apply view, apply some space out of a view, you should use something called margin, and say for example we do margin 10, and let's save it. So as you see that here it created 10 pixels. But not only that, actually it also created 10 pixels over here and there, but of course there are no other things on the left and right, so we don't see that. Okay, but it actually did. But since we are just interested to create some space at the bottom over here, we might not need to use margin top, because margin 10, because when you do margin, just margin, it creates space everywhere. So now we have 10 pixels here, 10 pixels here, 10 pixels here, and 10 pixels here. Okay, now since we don't want to create space everywhere, we just want to create space here, then to keep it simple, actually we could do just margin bottom. Okay, so at the bottom we want to place 10 pixels, not 10 RMB. So here we have 10. Okay, all right. Now the same could be done about this one, which is bottom box. Now here the top, here we could do margin, first border radius. Okay, and we also want to apply 10, and then we can see it, and then over here we can also apply margin again. So let's start just do margin, and then we do 10, and of course here it created another 10, so 10 here and 10 there. But for this box itself, which is bottom box, we just want to apply the top. Okay, all right, so here it created at the top. Now the question is, how about the item inside the box? Now if you want to squeeze things inside box, inside a view, then you need to use something called padding. So here we're gonna do padding. All right, and we want to apply padding everywhere, and say 10. Okay, so here you see that it created 10 space, but of course as it created, actually it made it bigger, because the text itself, it cannot squeeze it anymore. So what it did, it created some space, okay, outward from the text, but still within the view itself. So it took 10 pixels from here, 10 pixels from here, and here, and here. Okay, now this is also applied everywhere. Okay, top, bottom, right. For example, let's take this out and keep it. This is our original form, and we know that the flex 3 0.3, so it created some space. 0.3 is this one, right? And put the text in the middle, so we can remove that. And here we see that everything is very squeezed. And at this time, if you do padding, and if you apply say 10, now here you see top, left, right, bottom, everywhere it created 10 pixels from inside. Let's do 40, so it'd be much bigger. Okay, so hopefully it makes sense that how padding and margin works. So margin is always applied from the outside of the view, which means that if you apply a margin to your view, and outside of this view, if there are things, it creates distance from that thing and the view itself. And for padding itself, it always creates things internally inside a view. I mean, it creates space. Okay, so that's our understanding. Now, since we are step by step progressing, we don't want to keep this view. So for now, I'm just going to remove that. We don't need this. Okay, so we'll just be happy with this, and because we are happy and it looks much better. Now here I'm also going to remove top box. We don't need this, and instead of calling it bottom box, here for now we're just gonna call it box, and then here we're gonna also call it box. Okay, all right, so that's our basic understanding of how styles work. Okay, all right, now here we also have this text itself, right? So for this text we have this view, and then inside this we have text. For example, here we could apply styles to it. Now here we could say font size, say for example 38. Right, so it's a very big one. Okay, it's very big, just to give you a visualization, so it may look very big. All right, and then you can also apply a bit of color to it if you do want. Say for example I want to apply color to it. Okay, so here I'm gonna do color, and now this one I don't want to say do like this. I want to say to A4D50. Let's go ahead and save it. Now the color is different, so our app, our program, and our tutorial is looking much better as we are working on that. Okay, so this is one of the text that we put over here, and how about we put another text? So what we can do, we can go ahead and copy this one and put it here right away. Let's save it, and here we see, but in this case, because we are step-by-step building the app, so I'm going to change this. Okay, so here I'm going to say find the most. Okay, this is what I want to say. Let's go ahead and save it. This is what we see, and then over here, since this app would be all about e-commerce and furniture building, so here I'm going to say luxurious furniture. Okay, so I'm going to save this, so which looks much better. But then again, I can go ahead and change this to black, say for example like this, so the color would be black. But at the same time, one thing you could do over here, we can go ahead and create our style object. So here const styles. Okay, all right, like this, and then here I'm gonna name it welcome txt, like this. Okay, all right, so all the thing we could do over here, say for example font size. Okay, and here we could say 38. All right, 38, and then we have this color. Now I can use this color over here. Now of course we have an error. The reason is we are using style sheet, this one, and we need to import it at the top. Okay, so here we're gonna say style sheet, go ahead and save it, and the error is gone. Now what about we go ahead and just remove it from here, and here we can styles dot welcome text. So we can copy this and remove these things from here, styles dot welcome text. Okay, right, but now it does look similar, right? They're very similar. So how about we go ahead and create a reusable one? Okay, I mean, we want to keep the text size the same but the different color. And how to do that? Now to do this one over here, we can actually do it like this. First I'm going to cut the whole thing. Okay, and then I'm going to do something called here color and top, like that. Okay, and then I'm going to have this arrow, and then this, and then I'm going to do like this, and whatever was cut, I'm going to put it inside. Okay, so one of the thing I could do over here, I can go ahead and cut this guy and put color here. And now I know that this is very confusing, that what's happening over here. Okay, all right, but I'm going to explain more on this, so you just need to bear with me. All right, okay, right. So here right now, welcome text itself, we could do like this. Whatever the color that we copied, we pass that one. Okay, and for now, let's say you pass over here nothing, say you pass here 0. Okay, so let's go ahead and save it. Okay, now it does look like the first one, this one, which is this one, is taking effect. Why? Because the color is the same, right? As you see, the color is the same. This color we are passing. So when we pass, actually we call this one, we call welcome text, and then over here this two information. Okay, these are two parameters, these are called parameters. Here we are using them, but we are giving them kind of value. Okay, so this one is passing as a color, we call it color, and we give this color to this one. Okay, of course you can name this one anything, whatever the thing you name this one, you need to put it here, and this would be auto assigned to this guy. Okay, now I'm going to copy this and replace this here, and then I'm gonna say it like this. Now the beautiful thing about it, that I can replace the color. So what happened over here, I just have only one text style, actually not one text, and then I can pass a different color to it. Actually I want to pass here this color, and at the top we're gonna pass 0 0. The first one is say black. Okay, and of course now this top thing is a different thing, which we'll see soon. Now before we go ahead and proceed further on this one, let's come over here and let's change the style over here. Okay, so here we said that justify content is center. Say for example we don't want this one as center, and I remove this, and it goes at the top, right? It goes at the very top over here. Now I don't want it at the top so much, this text. And how do we control this? Now to control it, actually we have to control it from here. Remember, we have something called margin top, we have seen that one. Now say I do 12 and I save it, so we do see that it came down, right? Okay, or I could do say 70. All right, so it comes down a lot. Now what happens here, not only this comes down, this one also comes down, 70 70, right? So what we want this one to be used here. So I'm gonna do top, let's save it. Okay, now for the first one we're gonna pass 70, so this is 70 pixels. The second one we are passing 0, so what means that first time when we call welcome text, actually you see that, so font size is same, the color is black, and then this is 70. The next time we call this one, so font size is same, the color is little green, but the distance is 0, so margin top is 0, which means that this is very close to this one. So with this, actually you just learned how to create a reusable text style object. So this is an object. So to create a reusable object, the thing you want to change and reuse, you need to mention them here and assign them to their related properties. These are called properties. Assign them to their related properties over here. And you have to call the object from your text component. And as you call, you pass different values, and then it will take effect. So hopefully this makes sense how to create a reusable text component.